All right, ready to roll? Okay, we're live?
We're live.
That's us, Paul. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, mate.
Ladies and gentlemen, today we have Paul Mahoney, a good friend. Paul is a serial entrepreneur and business owner who's come from humble beginnings on the New South Wales Central Coast. He's the founder of Nova Financial Group, Limitless Venture Capital, and Tattoo Numbing Cream Co., as well as various other ventures. Paul is a best-selling author, keynote speaker, investor, mentor to young entrepreneurs, and property developer, just to name a few. He's also featured on various property-focused podcast TV shows on Sky in the UK. We're here today to talk about wins, losses, successes, failures, and everything in between. That's us. Paul, thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Good to have you, man. How's business?
Yeah, it's good. Keeping busy.
What have you been up to?
I've just got back from Bali.
Yeah.
We've just taken the numbing cream business over there.
Beautiful.
Getting into all the tattoo shops over in Bali.
Yep.
And yeah, having a bit of a holiday at the same time. So
it's your life at the moment, isn't it? So for people that don't know, Paul and I have actually known each other for, mate, what would we be now? If we're 35.
30 years.
30 years. Who else have you known for 30 years?
Not many people. My parents.
Poor bastards.
Well, we met in kindergarten.
Yeah.
At school in Wyoming on the Central Coast.
Man, it's God's country.
Yeah,
so for
right.
people that don't know, Paul was mercilessly bullied in school, and I'm just joking. No, but yeah, man, I don't think I've known anyone that long, to be honest, bro.
Yep.
That's a very long time.
Long time.
We can start there, man. Like, I think for you, like, just with your journey in general, like, I've always been a big fan of what you've done, and I think a lot of what you've done, like, a lot of people don't even know about. I mean, and I think there's multiple chapters to this. There's obviously the formative years, you know, the coast, kind of what we got up to there and how we grew up, and then, you know, you went off to Sydney, you finished school, involved in a little bit of financial markets type of work, like stockbroking maybe, for lack of a better word. I think anyone who's got that entrepreneur in them, there comes a time where that falls apart for various reasons, and then people have that pivotal moment where they're like, okay, I got to do something myself.
Yeah.
So your story kind of goes from, you know, where we grew up, chaos that we used to get involved in. Let's not lie, we didn't grow up in a beautiful place. And then kind of for you to kind of turn that around, get out of that corporate world, move to London, raise a stack of cash, start your own finance company, move back here, start an e-commerce company that has taken off as well, then go back over there, get into the property markets, and then to write a book, and then to become a TV personality, a mentor, an investor. I can't even keep up, but I think it's impressive, man, because like you've always had that something in you, the X factor, whatever you want to call it. So like, where did that come from? Have you just had that forever?
I don't know. I don't think it's. I certainly don't think it's X factor.
It is.
I don't think there's any. There's no secret sauce. I think it's just sort of. I was going to say hard work, but it's not necessarily hard work. It's like sort of the big moments. What I've learned is anyone can work hard, but working smart and sort of focusing on the sort of the impactful things. You know, like for the book, for example. The book I wrote it for about 6 months, and then I had about 12 months off because it was just really hard work.
Right.
And then I came back and finished it. So all up, it took over a year. Right. But, you know, that was something that took up a lot of my sort of extra time on top of what I was already doing. But, you know, really ended up helping our property businesses in the UK. So that was a big moment to pump that out. And that's what I'm talking about is, although it was hard work, it was something that was lasting, if that makes sense.
For sure.
You know, I think, that's important. I think a lot of people have a lot of ideas and talk a lot about those ideas, but don't actually do it. That's 100%. The feedback. I probably wouldn't have put it into these words myself, but I've had feedback from, you know, various business partners over the years that what they've found with me is that if I talk about doing something, next thing I've done it.
I could not agree with that more. In fact, one of the two things that you've just nailed there that I've noticed about you over the past 30 years is exactly that. You've always had that work ethic. You know, when some people have a bad day, they might take a day off. I've never seen you do that. You always seem to be able to get up and work, always. I don't think I've ever seen you take a day off, number one. Number two, I remember when you came to talk to me about the tattoo numbing cream business. I don't know if you remember, but it was at George Street in the city at Jusco, and you said, I got this tattoo idea. And I'm at this point in life, like we mentor a lot of people and we, invest in small businesses and I think the person's important. And, whenever I give people advice, I would say 9 out of 10, it'll just go in one ear and out the other. But every time I've given it to you, it goes in, it gets digested, it gets chopped and changed, it gets executed every single time. Like what has that been a consistent theme in your businesses where you digest that information and execute?
Yeah, I mean, when you mentioned about not having a day off, I think I was like that to a point, and sometimes that's not very healthy. I think you do have to work really hard to get to a certain point. The whole idea of outworking everyone around you and all that sort of thing obviously helps a lot. But at some point, you need to scale that back a bit. I went through a point when I started my businesses in the UK, and that was kind of at one point that was like my only baby,
Right.
And that I think that's very stressful when you've just got one thing that could fail. Any business can fail. You're working really hard to make it work. And I found that really stressful, and I ended up going through like a bit of a low point of like just burning out.
Really?
Yeah,
I
because
didn't know about this.
Yeah, because I mean, just all the stress of like, what if this fails? Like, I'm gonna have to go back and get a fucking job.
Yeah. And you were all by yourself in the UK.
Yeah, so just to sort of put some meat to the bone of the story you told before. So, obviously, southern Central Coast. We grew up in Wyoming. Not the nicest area of the Central Coast. Some of the coast is lovely. Wyoming isn't so lovely. And went to school there. Ended up going to school in Sydney. Played a bit of rugby, and then worked with a startup financial services company in Sydney.
Yep.
Did quite well there early on, and went up to Brisbane to sort of run an office up there. Then went down to Melbourne, started an office down there, and was doing really well. This was
before they went public as well, right?
Yeah, they went public in the end.
Company.
Yeah.
Yep.
I was sort of 23, 24 at this stage.
I remember vividly.
Yeah. So then I was traveling back and forth between Melbourne and Brisbane. It was pretty fun, and we're doing well. Business was going public, had a bit of a, disagreement with some of the...
It was a crossroads for you, I remember.
Yeah, it was a bit of a crossroads. It was kind of either committing to that, but then also there was a bit of bad blood about I was offered certain things and
it didn't
wasn't
come through.
Followed through.
It happens to a lot of people.
It sort of became obvious to me that they weren't going to follow through on certain promises with the business going public and all the rest.
Right.
So it was a real sort of moment of making a decision. So I just decided that I was going to pack up everything and move to the UK.
I remember when that happened. Do you remember?
Yeah.
Because I remember you called me and you're like, what do I do? Do I stay here and like take equity in someone else's company?
Yeah.
Or do I just go there? Because you didn't have anything over there.
No,
you just went over there.
2014 this was. Had a bit of money saved in the bank. That was about it.
Yeah.
And my parents are from over there. Mum's English, dad's Irish. I have an Irish passport, so I'd always wanted to go and live and work over there. So decided to just pack up and go, and didn't really have much to go to. My partner at the time was working with an investment bank in Melbourne.
Fixed income, is that the one?
More in like high net worth mortgages.
Right.
So she kind of managed to transfer her job over to the UK, but I didn't have anything.
Yeah.
I didn't really know what I wanted to do, to be honest. I applied for a few trading roles and that sort of thing, but nothing really stuck. And then I went for an interview in the city in London with a startup. It was an insurance brokerage, and I wasn't really that interested in the job, but I went anyway. And this is a good example of sort of just feeling things out and finding opportunities, because it was a job that probably would have paid me 1/10 of what I was earning before I left Australia.
Oh, really?
We were pumping out big numbers through 2 offices.
Yep.
And I was getting a clip of everything, to a startup on a pretty small salary, but with the potential to earn more money. But what happened in that interview was that they were a startup, but the person who'd funded that business was kind of intervention, kind of in the spot where I am now.
Can I ask, is this one of the individuals that backed your ultimate?
Yeah.
Right. Okay,
Yeah.
sure.
That's what I'm getting at. So he just sold a big business in London. I think he sold it for 60 million or something. So he had money, and he was looking to invest in opportunities. So I sort of saw that, got chatting to him, and thought, this could be good, because I wanted to do my own thing.
Yep.
Start a similar type model over in the UK, and that's kind of exactly what happened. I based upon that, I took the job. A week later, someone pulled out of their yearly ski trip.
I remember this as well.
So yeah, so went along to Courchevel in France, which is an interesting place. Got pissed for a few days with David, who was the venture capital guy, and ended up convincing him. By the time we were coming home, he was giving me the money to start this new business. So, about a week into my new job.
I was going to say, hang on. So you go over to London with no money, no job. You go for an interview at an insurance brokerage run by a VC investor. He cashes out, gets a stack of cash. Someone quits their job. You go on a skiing trip. You raise a bunch of money, and within 1 week, you've funded for your own company.
Pretty much, yeah.
Are you gifted by some sort of Irish leprechaun of luck or something?
No, I mean, yeah, you could consider that lucky, I suppose.
But let me pull myself up on that one.
Yeah.
I think there's an element of luck to anything.
Yeah.
I think what you're talking about, and I think you see this now that we're a bit more mature, that I think this guy saw something in you as an opportunity.
Yeah, that's
and so
exactly
I
what it
think
was,
that's kind of where that timing intersected.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the thing, right? If you're driven and you want to succeed in a certain area or just in general, you need to build up your sort of skill set, I suppose, and that's sort of what I did in Sydney and achieve some things there, and then putting myself out there in London. It did happen quicker than I thought, but that probably was luck. But obviously, as I say, putting yourself out there and meeting the right people, and then, as you say, he saw something in me.
That's where it's not luck.
We're not business partners anymore, but we're still friends. I only saw him a few weeks ago at a boxing show in London.
Awesome.
And yeah, it was just good catching up and sort of looking back, because that was 10 years ago now.
Can I ask you, how do you feel now? Because I've had the same thing as you. I tell a lot of people that any successes that I've had are a byproduct of people who believed in me.
Yeah.
How does it feel for you looking back to know that all it took was one person to believe in you for you to pull this stuff off in London at the time?
I think the biggest part of people believing in you is believing in yourself first.
For sure.
If you're a confident person who, I think being well spoken is pretty important because you need to be able to connect with people.
For sure.
If you're really confident in yourself and you can convince others to be confident in you, that's it made, really. Because, I think for anyone starting out or anyone who wants to do better, the hardest part is getting started and getting that first win.
Agreed.
I think Warren Buffett said this, but the first I'm a big believer in this. The first $100,000 of sort of money in the bank is much harder than the first $1 million.
100%. 100%.
And unless you're backed by your parents or something, getting that first $100,000 win is pretty hard.
Very hard.
So you need someone to believe in you. You need someone to back you. You need to partner with the right person to get there. Big believer that's the hardest part. And once you've got that opportunity, and this is definitely what I did, was just worked myself into the ground to make sure I didn't pass it up.
I remember that. Sorry to cut you off there. Did you feel an obligation to deliver on your investor/mentor? Did you feel that obligation to, this guy's put this into me, so now I've got to deliver that?
Yes, that played a part, but it was more just being shit scared of losing the opportunity and being poor.
Right.
I think growing up as a kid in a family that didn't have much money, it puts a real fear in the back of your brain
100%.
that you don't ever want to be there again. And it's I think, history tells that story is generally wealth works in 2-generation cycles.
Right.
The poor kid is ruthless
to
make money.
Here's something.
And then their kids spend it all.
100%. Yeah. 100%. Someone once said to me, show me the son of a great man. I was like, I can't think of any.
Yeah, exactly.
But I've never heard that from you before, because it is a very valid point that when you have to pull something off, it's so much different than when you want to pull something off.
Yeah.
When you're in a position where this has to work, because if it doesn't work, I'm fucked.
Yeah, exactly. I think if you grow up in a situation where money's a problem, and that become, a lot of families, money is their biggest issue, and that's their biggest concern, and that's what breaks up families and all that sort of thing. When you've got that in the back of your head, and these things get ingrained in you when you're a kid.
Did this happen to your family?
Well, yeah. I think for any family that didn't have much money, doesn't have much money, I should say, that money is usually the main worry.
But was that
biggest cause of conflict?
Could not agree more.
Yeah.
I mean, my background. I had a single mum from 10. I didn't have a dad for most of my life. I remember we were in I had 3 little brothers in a homeless refuge,
Yep.
and we're sleeping. There was 1 bed and a couch. I had 2 boys in the bed, 2 on the couch, mum on the floor.
Yeah.
And I was like 9. I was like, "Fuck this,
Yeah.
man! I don't want to live like this." But
No, I mean,
did
yeah.
you have that seed ever planted in you where you had experiences and you were like, this is not for me. I don't want this stress in my life."
Yeah, well, like my parents immigrated to Australia a year before I was born. They had $1,000 in their pocket.
Yeah.
They lived in a like a hostel, like immigration camp type place.
Really?
Yeah, when they first come here. Then when I was born, we lived in a 1-bedroom flat above a barbershop in Lidcombe. In
Really?
Sydney.
I didn't know this.
Yeah, and then we only moved up the coast when I was 2 or 3. And yeah, I mean, I think those things, as I say, they just instill that. Like, you know, I've heard people say that fear is a negative word, but I think sometimes fear is a bigger driver than like being aspirational. Someone that's
100%.
aspirational, that's fine. But if you're shit scared of being poor,
100%,
you're
bro.
going to work really
I
hard.
call it, it's like rocket fuel, man.
Yeah.
It's rocket fuel. Yeah, when you've got that fear and you've experienced and you've seen what it's like,
Yeah.
I think, do you ever get this thing where you're not afraid to lose because you know that that's just going to drive you right back to where you need to be?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm at that stage now that I'd always sort of wanted to be in, where I've diversified enough that I'm not worried anymore, and I know that I'm not just providing for myself now. I'm providing for my extended family and
Beautiful
their
daughter
kids
and your partner and
all the
yeah.
rest. So that's a really nice position to be in. It's actually, I find it a bit odd actually looking back, even like this just crossed my mind the other day. I was watching some sort of TV show and. There was, I think it was a single mum and kid, and they were really poor, and that was this big struggle. And it's like, fuck, like, you know, how don't they realize it's not that hard to make money? In hindsight, it seems really easy.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, but
you could say the same thing about us though,
Yeah.
because you know, when we were starting out, like it was hard.
Yeah.
It was hard to make money. It seems. I think to answer that point that you're talking about, it's easy when you've done it to look back and be like, how don't you get it? But there was a point where we were in that position.
Yeah, exactly,
we didn't get it. And remember, we would just go around asking questions.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, whoever's in that position, because everyone winds up in that position for various reasons, you know, it just comes down to, are you willing to ask? Are you willing to learn? Are you willing to do? I think those are the 3 things that it comes down to.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of people end up trapping themselves as well. Like it's much easier to take lots of risks when you're young.
For sure.
You know, late teens, early 20s, before you have kids and a mortgage and all the rest.
Yeah.
You know, I can see how a lot of people struggle to do things once they've already got a mortgage, once they've already got kids. You know, how do you put the family home on the line to start a business? That's a bigger thing than
I have
what we
thought about
did.
that. Yeah, I have thought
we
about
we did
that.
it young. We didn't really have any. Well, we had risk, but if we lost it all, we could just start again.
It's funny you mention that because I a story I've told I've told a couple of people, but I when Lara was born, she's the same age as Frankie now, just turned 5.
Yeah. Well, Frankie's nearly 6. But yeah.
Oh, you win. But she was 3 months old, and I got caught on the wrong end of a deal, and I lost 100K in a day. But I didn't tell anyone. That was everything I had.
Yeah.
Not just in the business, but in my personal account. So that was all gone. I remember I had $2 in the bank, literally couldn't afford a bus home, and you know, I was in that position. I couldn't afford baby formula, and I called my partner. I was like, "We've just lost everything. I have no money."
Yeah.
And I was stressed. I was pulling my hair out, and she seemed really calm. I was like, "What's wrong with you? We have no money. I can't even afford to feed our child. I've failed at life." And she's like, "Just relax." She's like, "You'll figure it out." I'm like, "I don't know where you get this confidence in me," but she goes, "You always figure it out." And she said something, and it's always stuck with me for my whole life. I said, "What are we going to do if I can't figure it out?" She goes, "We'll live with my parents." I said, "I will literally kill someone before I live with your parents."
All right, I'll figure it out.
Yeah. And then she said, "That's why we'll never be poor."
Yeah.
So I've kind of always thought to myself, you know, when you do have your back against the wall and you have to pull it off, you do think a lot differently. You know, for example, if I took everything you had today, I guess I've got 2 questions. Number 1, what would you do? And number 2, would you be stressed? I'd take everything.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd be stressed.
I don't think you would be. I really don't. I think you'd be annoyed. I don't think you'd be stressed.
As I say, I think everything is easier in hindsight because you don't know what you don't know. When you're just starting out, you don't know how to succeed. You don't know how to run a successful business. You don't know how to turn a startup into a successful business.
Correct.
When you've done it a few times, as you say, if you were to take everything away, I could very easily go out and convince someone today to give me $1 million to start another business because I know what to tell them.
Correct.
Yeah. and they will believe in me because I'll say, look what I've done in the past.
Correct.
That makes life a lot easier.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, there's no shortcut to that either. I don't think.
Sure.
You mentioned about losing that money sort of earlier on, and I suppose I was lucky that didn't happen to me.
Yeah.
Because that probably would ruin some people. I mean, I've lost money
I've seen
more
it
recently.
ruin people. Have you seen it? Have you seen these losses? So you've just hit on a really good point that I wanted to talk about. Sometimes, so for example, you and I have both failed at a lot of things, right? And we've succeeded at stuff. Have you seen people crippled by that failure? And what's your advice when people do take that hit and they're trying to figure out, do I just buckle or do I go work at Coles or do I keep working?
I think the biggest thing that I've seen quite a few people get crippled by is adjusting to a certain lifestyle. But this is a point I wanted to raise, but with regards to like how you utilize what you're earning, because I've seen a lot of people start to earn a lot of money and they buy themselves the Range Rover and the nice house. And,
I did that.
you know what I mean? And they take on these liabilities and they adjust to a certain lifestyle and then everything goes to shit, which happens, and they can't adjust back.
Paul, do you know what's funny? When I got robbed, I had to sell my Range Rover.
Yeah.
But even that didn't cover everything.
Yeah.
So sorry, please continue.
Yeah, no, that's just my point. Is it's like I've always been fairly cautious of taking on. When I was going to say debt, but I've got lots of debt, but most of it's investment debt, and it's covered by those investments. I've got quite a decent property portfolio in the UK and some here as well. That's good debt, but debt like cars and motorbikes and jet skis and boats and even your home loan, those things can cripple you if your cash flow dies.
Right. So you think that's where the big hits?
That's what I've seen happen most often.
Right.
Is where people have started to do really well, stuff's gone wrong, but they've got all these liabilities.
Right.
Then they need to start to offload them. Then they get depressed.
Yeah, right.
I've seen that happen to quite a few people. So yeah, I mean, if
so it's like the offloading of everything
just
that you've
be careful.
earned.
Until you're 100% confident in your cash flow.
Yep.
Which the biggest one I've seen people do this with is either a job that pays really well.
Yep.
Which what's the saying? If you're living off a salary, you're 3 paychecks from being homeless or something.
100%.
Yeah,
couldn't agree more.
Or people living off one business that's doing well. Which is probably even more risky because with a job, you can just go and get another job.
Yep.
But if you're living off one business that's doing well and in 6 months it's not doing well and you've taken on all these liabilities, what happens, So I've tried to learn from what I've seen there and being quite cautious about taking on those sorts of liabilities.
Is that what's driven? Because you're obviously very well diversified, and this is just like not to talk too much about your stuff, but like you said, you've got the property, you got the finance, you got the advisory stuff, you got the econ portfolio. So you are well diversified. Do you think that's a product of your understanding of the need to be spread out nicely?
Yeah,
like
I think it was part of that learning curve that I mentioned to you before about when I was working. I was working 14-hour days, 7 days a week. Literally, it was just started with me in the office smashing the phones.
What is it in your stockbroking one?
This was no. So we started a property investment advisory company in the UK.
Right.
So this was relatively. The company I was working with in Sydney and Brisbane and Melbourne was full service financial planning, but a lot of it was property. I went to the UK and took a similar model but applied it a lot more to property.
Right.
So pretty much what we did is we met with people, put together a strategy, source them properties, finance them, manage them. So helping people build a property portfolio. And that just, that's sort of, it was we would market the services, people would inquire.
So you were doing the sales calls all day.
So
Old school.
That was me just smashing the phones.
Is this the one that your mentor invested into after the right?
Yeah.
And was this the first one he invested into or the second one?
Yeah, so that was the first one.
Right.
So that's what I was referring to before about the ski trip and all the rest.
Yep.
And then hired some staff and just built from there. And that business we got to about 20 odd employees and it was doing relatively well. Market's changed a bit now, but
as it does.
Yeah, and that's another learning curve, isn't it? You know,
big
like
time.
a business model that works last year doesn't necessarily work this year.
I've had that happen to me before.
Yeah, so
Many times.
you need to adapt. You need
Yeah.
to, and I think I mentioned before about that sort of burning out phase where I got a bit depressed and I was just really worried that this thing that this was probably four odd years into the business. I'd just put my heart and soul into this. What if everything went to shit? And that's when I started to look at, well, how can I make sure that if that happens, I'll still be okay.
Right. And how long? And so
I think that was around the time my ex-partner got pregnant and all the rest as well. So you start to
Right.
think a bit less about yourself and more about how do you be a provider.
completely, it gives you this like subconscious drive.
Yeah.
There's some people like wear it on their sleeve. I
Yeah.
think other people probably more like you. It's an internal thing, where you can't explain it, but it's this extra drive.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, especially when you've got a kid, I think your definition of a man for me is, being a provider. So,
100%. I agree.
yeah.
That's actually I'm really glad you said that, man, because that's something I missed out on a lot as a kid. And one of the best byproducts of what I've done with my businesses is being able to give my kids a life that I never had.
Yeah.
They've never had to stress, they've never had to witness violence or yelling or poverty or any of that stuff that I had to have. The best thing of everything I've ever done is being able to give that to them, I think. So when the market's changed and it dipped, did you manage to turn that around, or how long after that did the cream start as well?
Yeah, no. So that the business I was just talking about is still going. It's not as we don't have as many employees and things as we used to, but it's still operating. It's still doing all right. But yeah, so around that time, I'm trying to think what I started out with. So I think it probably was. So we started the numbing cream business about 6 or 7 years ago.
So can I give a little intro to that? So Paul started a very small tattoo numbing cream business. And I remember you came in with the idea and you were just playing it out, and you said, some of the best businesses start with, I think this is a good idea, I use it and I like it.
Yeah.
I think there's a huge market for it.
Yeah, I think it's the typical entrepreneurial story, right?
100%.
You come across a problem personally, you find a solution to that problem for yourself.
Yep.
And then you realise, shit, actually, loads of other people have the same problem but don't have a solution.
Well, you also you like the product as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you were...
it was as I say, I'll tell the story. So I've got quite a lot of tattoos underneath all this.
very well hidden, Paul.
And I got my chest done in London. I think this was about 7 years ago. And I hadn't had tattoos for a couple of years, but it was agony. I was supposed to get the whole thing done in one day. He got through the outline. He went over my nipple. And it was, it was horrible.
Anyway, I got a rest, which was really weird.
It was horrible. So I said, look, I need to come back. And I asked, so is there anything you can do about, just making it hurt less? And they said, no, there's not. You can take Panadol, but it doesn't really do much. Yeah, so at that time, the only place you could pretty much get numbing cream, which is just a topical anesthetic, it's similar to what you would get, injected into your skin when you get stitches and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, like a Botox type of... No,
it's just lidocaine based.
Right,
so it's
correct,
a topical anesthetic. You put it on and it just numbs the
Receptors,
nerve endings
whatever,
in the top of your skin.
Gotcha.
You can only get it from China. You had to order on eBay. It took 2 months to come. There's typos on the box, and it was all just very clunky. And most people didn't know it existed. So
I remember that was a big part of this one.
yeah, so I ordered a bigger. I got some for myself, and then I thought I'll see if any of my friends are interested in this. So just posted about it a bit on social media, and it started to get a bit of traction. So
Just organic traction.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, and then. So I thought, all right, well, let's try to do this properly. We found a manufacturer. We come up with our own brand. It's literally still our logo today.
Yeah.
I got that done on Fiverr 7 years ago for $5.
That's so
And it's still our
What's
logo.
your return on investment on that $5?
We're the biggest brand in the world now.
But I mean,
for that
bro,
niche.
to be fair, you nailed the name. Was that intentional?
Yeah, so the whole idea with the name was obviously it's very SEO friendly.
It's the name, bro. It's what it is.
Yeah, it does have its downsides though, and that's something to consider when it comes to naming a brand is you can't trademark something that describes the product.
That's a very good point.
So what we have trademarked more recently is the actual logo, because lots of fakes have popped up.
Right.
So we've got that trademarked in the US and the UK.
Do you feel humbled by that people actually want to
yeah,
the Louis Vuitton
of course.
effect?
I mean, this has happened right from the start.
Right.
Because it's relative, as you know yourself, it's relatively easy to see if a social media page or a website is doing well.
For sure.
Through various search tools. So as soon as you start to do well, copycats spring up. And that's happened pretty much from the start. initially it was, other brands just copying everything we did, which is obviously flattering to some extent until they start using all your content.
Oh, that's the worst.
So yeah, we've had a
That
lot of that.
pisses me off.
We've had a lot of that over the years where people are just literally stealing everything we post and all
Yeah.
the videos we create and all the rest.
That pisses me
More
off.
recently, we've had people pretending to be us, which is more sinister because they're either just scamming people, so just taking money and not providing any product, or they're selling other products after having pretended to be
Really?
us. Yeah. So we've had a lot of that lately. Luckily, being a bigger business now, we've got an account manager at Meta and all the rest, so he deletes Instagram and Facebook pages almost on a daily basis
Really?
for us. Yeah, we've had probably 50 pages on Facebook and Instagram in the past
Dead set.
sort of month.
What sort of turnover do you have to get a Meta account
It's
manager?
not it's not turnover based. It's it's I believe it's somewhat spend based.
Right.
But it's not. There's no number. You just kind of get picked up as someone they.
For sure.
Yeah, it's interesting actually. We've only had one for 6 months or so now. Their job is to make you spend more.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
why they're there. But obviously, you're only going to spend more if you're more productive. If you're making more money. So they've been very, 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 very helpful. It's pretty much like having an extra employee inside Facebook.
Do you get
for
ads
free.
declined anymore? Or is that gone now?
Not
for you?
really, but they give us a lot of guidance on what to do. Like for example, at the moment we're part of one of their trial runs for. I don't really understand. I don't run the Facebook ads. But
I'm not a nerd.
it's some sort of new platform or way of marketing through their platform.
Right.
So we're spending X amount, and they're giving us an extra coupon on top of that.
Gotcha.
For taking part. So little things like that, and getting rid of copycat pages and all the rest. They've been really good for that.
So this happened. You were getting copied all the time.
Yeah. So yeah. It's happened a lot. Where was I with that? Sorry. So
The journey
we
of the
found our
numbing
own
creams.
product.
Yep.
We started to just do started to promote posts. So very simple, like
Oh,
post
just
on
the boosting.
Facebook, boost a post by
That's
$5
cool.
or $10 a day.
Yeah.
That's how it all started, and was literally just myself, and then myself and my ex-partner now. And then, I had a supplement store on the coast at the time, so I recruited, the manager of that and his partner to start posting all the product.
Right.
And it just started to build and build. And then a friend of mine went into social media marketing at the time as well. So
Josh, was it?
yeah, so he come on board and he's still with us today. So it was all, sort of timing worked well. And then I sort of thought, fuck it, let's just throw some proper money at it and see what happens.
Really?
Because we'd seen some progression, and it was I recall on numerous occasions my partner at the time was saying, "Is this even worth it? Like, it's very time consuming. We're not really making any money from it." Like, yeah, just let it run for a bit. It looks like it's getting some traction, and that probably went for 6 to 12 months. Where
What was to the extent you could disclose the turnover at that point? But what sort of numbers was it floating
I
around?
mean,
at
it
that
was
point?
small numbers. It
Right.
was, it was
20, 10.
Off the top of my head, I couldn't even tell you, but we were probably doing a couple $100 a day or something.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, it was small numbers. And then I thought, let's just throw a few $1,000s at it this month from a marketing perspective.
When you say at it, you mean at Facebook ads?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. When Josh, my friend, come on with me, and let's just throw some more decent money at it.
Right.
And yeah, it got traction, started to take off. And that was when we were just in Australia. We were only marketing to Australia anyway. And this is another point to consider, especially for anyone who's involved in e-commerce, is the potential of sort of scaling through globalization.
Yeah,
Like
because you guys are in how many countries at the moment?
we're everywhere.
Right, all
Yeah.
across the world.
I mean, we've
every
got
continent.
a warehouse in Sydney, San Diego, and London. So we literally ship everywhere.
Can I get you to tell a cool, because I want to keep drilling, because this is a
Yeah.
really cool business.
Yeah.
From day one I've said this is a true success story of an e-commerce business. I remember you told me a story that your flatmate was sending out packages, and the business got so busy that your flatmate got rich from posting out these packages.
yeah.
Is that true?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, so it wasn't my flatmate, but it was
It's the best story I've ever heard. by the
yeah.
way.
So it was I hired a girl in London to help out with the admin. So she was doing the job that is now done by about 10 people. So all the emails, social media messages, replying to comments, all that sort of thing.
So like your right hand.
Yeah, all the stuff I didn't want to do.
I have that now as well.
And also doing the postage as well.
Yep.
And then her partner started to help out with the postage. And it got to stage, I was paying him, like £15,000 a month.
To mail that
For
product.
postage and handling.
How long did he get to keep that lick for?
A while. Yeah, between the two of them, they were doing really well. But
Must be a fan of you now.
Probably.
Put his kids through college.
Yeah.
And deposit on the house.
I mean, it was just, and that was kind of when I mentioned before about taking it from Australia or elsewhere. That was kind of where everything just went bang. It was like, you look, we've got 24 million or something in Australia, 300 million in the US.
Yeah.
If you look at interest groups, so far as I understand, the interest group for tattoos in Australia is about 1 million. In the US, it's about 100 million.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's pretty crazy. So yeah, when we decided to go sort of, especially to the US, where probably about 75% of our business is now, everything just took off.
So that's interesting, Paul, because a lot of people, and again, not to say it's luck, because I think there's a combination of things, but a lot of people will take a brand here over there, and they get their bag ready to get all that cash, and like the cultural differences in terms of marketing, it doesn't play out as well. You obviously had the opposite because it's worked quite well.
Yeah.
What do you attribute that to? Like, why did it work? Like, because sometimes it's hard to hop the pond from Australia to America.
Yeah, I think with this particular brand, and I've had others that didn't work along the way, tried to duplicate it. And, in rough sense, the ways I've tried to duplicate it is it was very much an underserved product.
Right.
At the time. Yep. So I was lucky in that sense that there was other products that were established, but none of them were doing proper marketing. So we were the first to sort of properly market this product through social media channels and that sort of thing.
Right.
So that's now given us that sort of first starter advantage where, we've got the biggest following, all that sort of stuff. It was underserved. It's an industry that's, people are passionate about tattoos. Some people are passionate against this type of product as well.
Losers.
So that kind of works in our favor, because probably 80% of the comments we get on social media are negative. Don't be a pussy and use numbing cream. And what these people don't realize is they're actually helping us.
Isn't that
because
funny?
People start arguing on our posts.
And it boosts the algorithm.
Yeah.
I've seen that before. Yeah. The more people you piss off,
Yeah.
you get a bunch of boomers. Back in my day, it's like, and then some like young guns come in. Oh, it's a really good. That's hectic.
Yeah. So that really helps. Is that sort of the fact it's slightly controversial, and I've tried to duplicate that in other areas and it hasn't really worked. Which is a good example of some things do take off and others don't.
Bro, I say to people in digital marketing all the time, like the ones that will listen when they come in, because we've got an agency and a talent business and all that sort of stuff, and I'll say, listen, you're going to pick 9 horses and we're going to put them in a race.
Yeah.
8 of those 9 horses are going to die.
Yeah.
So if you're not comfortable with failing 8 times to get rich off one horse, then this is probably not for you. Because some people they take it personally. I'm like, who cares? You try, you fail. You try, you fail. You but one of those horses can make you rich.
Yep.
And so was it similar to you, where you just line up your strategies and it's kind of like bang, bang, bang. This is the one we're going to scale.
I was lucky that I hit the nail on the head the first time, because it makes it a bit easier when you've got funds or revenue or cash flow, whatever you want to call it, coming from other areas. It makes it easier to then grow. People are saying money makes money.
Yeah.
It's pretty true. Without having the resources available to you, you go back to that point you made before. You've got to find it somewhere. That's the hardest part, is finding the resources. But then I think, talking about how I've kind of tried to diversify, is you can only do that by sort of best utilizing those resources. Rather than spending that money on fast cars and women and that sort of thing. Putting it into new things that have the opportunity to be one of those 2 out of 10 horses. For
sure. And did you so a couple of things, because I remember when you started the Facebook ads, and I don't even know if you would remember this, or like, you might not remember the extent to which you caught on to a trend which is now global. You were one of the first people that I saw to do video ads on Facebook. But not only that, it was like sub 30-second, like real TikTok style ads.
Yeah.
And this was before TikTok was big. Do you
I mean,
remember
you probably
that?
got Josh to
Well, I was going to say,
thank for
well,
that,
you have
yeah.
him to thank, but do
I've got
you
him to
remember
thank.
when he pushed? Because that
he's
was the
good.
first time.
So Josh is an old friend of mine as well, and he's one of those people that just spends a lot of time learning about latest practice, the best practices.
He was onto this before it was a thing.
Yeah, no, he's very good. And yeah, so yeah, I've got him to thank for that. So it's another good example of associating yourself with the right people, right? You know, you can't succeed on your own. I mean, you can, but you're never going to be as successful as a smart, driven person that surrounds themselves with other smart, driven people.
Yep. And do you think that applies? Because if you look at like life and business, you got people above you, below you, beside you.
Yeah.
Do you think right across that spectrum, they've all got to be on that same page?
No, I don't necessarily
I
think...
do.
Well, yeah, the reason I say no is I have quite a lot of staff that... we've got a team in the Philippines, for example, that just do admin work.
For sure.
You know, they don't have to be entrepreneurs or driven, and I don't want them to be.
That's a very good point.
I have that team because not because it's cheap labor, but it's cheaper than having that same team here.
For sure.
So they obviously need a job, and they don't need to be paid as much. If I had that same team in Australia, it would cost me 3 or 4 times as much.
For sure.
So I mean, that's another thing that can help people that are trying to scale businesses is outsourcing.
Oh, 100%. And it's good to be able to create jobs as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
How does it feel for you? Because like, if you look at what you've done, I don't know if you stopped to kind of pause and acknowledge this, but you've created opportunities for your best mate, for your investors, for your business partners in the UK, for the dude who's making $25K a month sending packages. How does it feel to like create opportunity for people around you?
Yeah, I mean, it's nice. Yeah, it's good, and you get pretty friendly with the people that you're doing business with. Yeah. For example, the distribution center that we both work with.
Oh yeah,
in
Steve.
the US. Steve,
yeah.
I mean,
great guy. Shout out, Steve.
Yeah, we do a lot of business with them now, and it's good to see that we're helping their business as well, and that they reciprocate on that. They're very helpful with various different things.
Very hard worker.
They go sort of above and beyond with helping with things like photo shoots and all sorts of stuff they help us out with. So yeah, it's good. It's good to be able to help the people around you.
Have you ever been in a position where you've had someone that's kind of coming in with negativity, or who just, kind of doesn't really want to, just that creates like a cultural erosion almost,
Yeah, I think sometimes the hard thing, and this is something I experienced in the UK, is there can be a level of resentment in business, both from sort of employer to employee and with business partners.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, just in certain ways, like especially if you mentioned about surrounding yourself with other driven entrepreneurial people.
Yeah.
I think whenever you're, for example, we'll go back to my story, you're the person, the employee that's making shitloads of revenue for the company, and you're doing okay, but you're always going to want more.
For sure. Yeah.
And you see that you're making your boss rich.
Is that you?
And you want to be rich.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And then you say, okay, well, fuck this, I'm going to go do it myself, and you flip the switch.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden you've got you 10 years ago working for you, feeling exactly the same way.
That's a good point. It's funny you mention that, because we in our agency, like, we encourage high performers and ambitious, people who want to do side hustles.
Yep.
And we had a couple of them who left and became millionaires. So it's kind of like the time that we had them, it was good.
It's good if you can take advantage of that upswing. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, you do have to accept that some birds are meant to fly, I think. So have you, in terms of, there's so many questions I could ask about this business, because I think there's so many fascinating things about it. I want to ask about kind of like younger entrepreneurs, but we might keep going through the numbing cream story.
okay, yeah.
How many? What's the like biggest month you've had, and how many customers have you got all over the world?
Yeah, okay.
To the extent you can disclose those numbers.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, we've done over $1 million a month.
Wow. $1 million a month.
Yeah.
How did it feel to first hit $1 million a month?
Yeah, it was a good feeling, I suppose. One thing we did notice though is that the month we did that, our margins were much tighter.
Was it November?
It might have been, yeah.
Black Friday?
Yeah, it might have been, yeah. Our margins were a lot tighter to the point where I sort of said to... Because I've got... So Josh, this is another sort of learning curve I've been through. Not so much with Josh, because he's always just wanted to focus on Facebook and Instagram. He said, this is my thing. You know, find other people to do other stuff.
Yep.
And that's what I've done. You know, I've worked with sort of one size sort of, you know, agencies that offer everything. But what I've decided is I work with about 5 or 6 different agencies now. So Josh does Facebook, Instagram. I've got a company that does Google marketing. I've got a company that does SEO. I've got another one that does Amazon. Another one that does our email and text message marketing.
That can be a big one.
Yeah. So, and the reason I've found that to be good is it's a little bit more work on my part, but it means that rather than getting a report once a month that says, this is our overall performance, this one's doing well, this one isn't, and they play things off against each other, I've found.
Or so you put them in as gladiators.
I ring fence them all, and therefore they're always
When
accountable.
you sit there like Julius Caesar, while your digital marketers try and kill each other, and you're getting fed grapes.
Well, not so much that, but just being able to hold them all accountable each month. You know?
For sure. For what it's worth, Paul, I do the same thing.
Yeah.
And I think it does help them be accountable to each other. And I actually think that you know, we talked earlier about when you've got pressure put on you. Yeah. Sometimes it's good to put a bit of pressure on people and be like, you know, listen, you want to do good because this guy over here, he's doing pretty good too. You never know, he might have 2 jobs next week. So bro, let me tell you, man, $1 million a month, like that is fucking impressive. Don't like ever lose sight of how incredible that is. And sometimes I think about some of the stuff we've done, and I feel like, you know what? If I lost everything tomorrow, like in your case, you could well, I still made $1 million a month. So it's I think the cool thing about that, no one can ever take that particular win from you.
I suppose, yeah.
And yeah, for me, I've always thought that 7-figure month, like, I think that's when you know you've really done something very, very well, because it's hard to do, and I think like it can be made to look easy, but a 7-figure month's incredible. How did it feel like when you first did that?
Yeah, as I say, it was a milestone, obviously.
You're being humble, Paul.
Yeah. No. I think honestly, I think for me it was quite a strange feeling actually, because we were pushing for it quite a lot, and it was like this goal. And then when I did it, I was like, actually, this isn't that good, because I looked at the bottom line and it was like, oh shit, we need to do better to be more profitable. I think that's a bit of a learning curve as well, as it's like, who cares if you do 10 million a month? If you're spending 11, then you've lost $1 million.
That's a really good point.
So I think I'm more focused on what we actually hold on to now.
Maybe it was naive for me to assume that you can maintain that same profitability at like 200, 300. Yeah. So were you spending a lot on ads at that point as well?
We spend a lot of money on ads, and what kind of got us to that point was we spent more. Yep. And the return on that spend was less.
So you get that diminishing drop off.
Yeah. That tends. I've found that tends to happen in any marketing at some point.
Big time.
But you know, we're still growing. One area of our business that's grown a lot lately is wholesale.
Right.
So, you know, it's hard to focus on all things at once, but we were very focused on B2C. You know, selling online to the end user. For years, and lately, and that's kind of for the past couple of years, that's been consistent. We've probably been going a little bit, but pretty consistent. So the last year, we've been more focusing on wholesale. So, you know, B2B, selling to the likes of tattoo shops and tattoo wholesalers and that sort of thing.
What's the split? Like 80-20, 80 B2C, 20
I mean,
B2B?
it would have been like 90-10, but the past couple of months have just been crazy. I'm trying to work out why.
Right.
I mean, it's a good why.
Sometimes you can't, bro. Sometimes you can't figure it out. Sometimes this stuff just happens, and you're like, what the fuck? Where are these people coming from that are buying our stuff?
Amazon. I don't know whether I was just talking to my partner this morning about it. I don't know whether we've been put on some sort of list of like up and coming products or something.
Really?
But the last few weeks have just been crazy with, like, even just this morning we had like 10 emails of people wanting to become wholesalers from
Really?
being asleep.
Really?
Yeah. Just like, it's been really crazy
So
the
you've
past
got
few
Amazon
weeks.
working at the moment.
So it's funny thing is we've really struggled to get our own Amazon working.
I've never been able to.
Yeah, it's hard.
No, I
Amazon
can't.
is very tough. It's
What
a
do you
hard
hate about
company
it?
to
I'll
work-
tell you what I hate. What do you hate?
They're-
I'll tell you mine. Is it that it looks like a fucking spaceship?
It looks shit, but they're very difficult to work with, Amazon,
Yeah.
and that because they're just massive. They don't care. They don't give a shit about our brands. You know, then they work with all the biggest brands. They make it very took us about 6 months to get what they call ungated. So actually get an account
Yeah,
and start to be able to sell.
Did you have to do a video call with them as well? And they
No,
interview
we didn't have to
you?
do a video call, but we had to provide inside leg measurement. You know, literally everything.
You what?
It's a, it's a saying, mate.
Okay,
We had to provide literally everything.
You just sent
Yeah,
them a little snapshot.
Lots of documentation, all the rest, and back and forth and back and forth, both in the UK and the US. And you know, and then you know, you have one person that complains, and then they call that a violation, and it's a nightmare. But so we haven't been that focused on growing that side of the business, but the area that's grown is people wanting to sell our product on Amazon.
Right.
And I say this one, we must have been listed somewhere because we've just had a massive tidal wave of people wanting to sell our product, buying, you know, big numbers, which is great.
So they're wanting to sell your
But I've
product
no idea
on
how you
Amazon.
make that happen.
No, yeah, I mean, but sometimes that's the answer, man. Sometimes you just don't know.
I think that is a point to make as well. Is it's with these things, it's just about plugging away. You know, we spoke before about diversification and spreading your risk and, you know, taking advantage of opportunities and that sort of stuff. You know, no one has a bulletproof game plan, but if you're working hard, if you've got your finger in a few pies and you're trying to make one of them really take off, then chances are at some point it will.
That's a good point. And what? So in this mix, when have you tried stuff that just failed, and you're just like, this didn't work whatsoever?
I mean, I've started various e-commerce brands trying to follow a similar model to the numbing cream that just haven't really worked.
Right.
You know, some of them probably could and could still work, but then
you have to take your foot off one pedal and put it on the other.
You've only got so much. That's another thing I've sort of learned is I've passed up various opportunities. You know, for example, one in particular, very, very recently, I was going to buy into a entertainment venue on the Central Coast. And I sort of just decided that with everything else I've got going on, this thing's going to take up a lot of my time and probably cause me a lot of stress.
For sure.
Do I really want that? Because yeah, it could do really well, but at the same time, do I really want to be there every day? Do I really want to be worrying about bar staff not turning up to work and all that rubbish that goes along with a very hands-on business like that? And I sort of decided, well, no, I don't.
Do you find, that's a good answer. Do you find, like, because you're at a point in your career now where, like, you know, and this must be a pretty good feeling where, like, you can almost take on that role of the guy that backed you when you were starting out.
Yeah.
You can almost take on that role, and, you know, to the credit of this guy and to an opportunity that you now have, like, all you need to do now is just pick people who have that same, you know, that same energy in them. Have you looked at, instead of starting businesses, just investing into businesses with good founders?
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, so I've just started a venture capital company.
I saw that. Good name, by the way.
Thanks.
Limitless. Steal that name.
So I actually just noticed this morning that someone I know has a building company with the same name.
Really?
And I didn't know, like, it wasn't like...
Bro, this podcast doesn't have a name. Could we call this the Limitless Podcast?
Go for your life.
Okay, awesome. You heard it here first.
Yeah, so it's funny that I sort of, you know, I forgot that was the name of your company because I've just started one with the same name.
So you dogged your friend.
Yeah, but no,
Paul's
exactly
out here
right.
doing copyright infringement.
I think the hardest thing with investing in businesses is obviously you need to find the right people and you know, I think with that sort of business, the sort of venture capital side, you're probably going to pass up 999 opportunities out of 1,000
For sure.
And you know that sometimes the deals you don't do are the best deals.
Yeah.
You know, so I don't know. It's just Yeah, it's as you say, it's a good position to be. I don't necessarily need to be doing more, but I want to.
Bro, yeah, and to that point, like, you know, people say, what's your, you know, what are you going to do for retirement? I'm like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah, what is
what's retirement? Who would like, oh, well, don't you have a dream of sitting on a beach? I'm like, fuck no.
Yeah, well, I sit on beaches all the time, but I got my phone and laptop.
I know. I've found that instead of businesses, man, lately I've just been looking more at people.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm looking at a couple at the moment, like there's a small gift box businesses and a little candle startup. But it's like, I like the businesses, but I like the people more. And for me, it feels good to be able to, because, like, again, I'm only a byproduct of people that believed in me.
Yeah.
As simple as that. I genuinely attribute a lot of what I've done and what you've done.
Yeah.
We couldn't have, like, we probably could have, but it happened a lot quicker with, like, proper people backing us.
Yeah, a
I
perfect
think.
example of that, which just backs up your point there, is with David, who we were just talking about. So the guy that first gave me the money in the UK to start the property companies, we had targets for me to hit. So generally, from what I've seen, with most venture capital companies, they give you the money, but they rip your eyeballs out. They want 95% of your company.
Terrible.
And you might be able to scale some back based upon performance. And that's kind of not as aggressive, but that's kind of the way David went into it. Wanting, you know, most of the company, he was putting in most of the money, fair enough, and allowing me to scale it back. And I convinced him to do it the other way around. So we start 50-50.
Yep.
And if I don't perform, then he scales it back.
Look, I did the same thing.
Yeah.
Do you think that? I think that's better.
Yeah.
That's so much, because it's just clean.
It gives you more drive, I think, because
does.
you don't want to lose.
You also don't want to start off with 20% of your company.
Yeah.
That's not fun.
Yeah.
Imagine if you go out to for a walk and someone gives you 20% of a chocolate bar. Fuck off! I don't want to go for a walk.
Yeah. So anyway, so the first milestone that I hit, like literally, like to the day. You know, it was a last minute scramble. We had lunch together, and he said, "Oh, you know, you're finally actually starting to make some money." He goes, "I'm surprised," and I didn't know whether to hit him or hug him. But and I asked him what he meant, and he said, I didn't think this business would work. I said, "Well, why the fuck did you give me £250,000?"
Really?
He said, "Because I thought it would fail pretty early on. I wouldn't have to give you the whole amount of money. And I'd just fold you into one of my other companies, and you could run my legal firm or something like that." So his thought process when he agreed to that deal was, "This is a really good guy. I don't want to lose him."
Bro, that's incredible.
And I think what will happen is I'll end up having him run one of my other companies.
That's an incredible story.
Yeah, so
Never heard this before.
that was his words. Yeah. So I think that's a good example
For the people.
It's for the people. Yeah,
it's incredible, man.
Yeah. So, you know, obviously he ended up making money from a deal he didn't think he'd make money from.
Yeah.
We bought him out about 4 or 5 years after.
So you bought your company back?
Yeah, so I brought a friend over from Australia who was working with me in the Sydney business.
Right.
Him and my first employee in London, the three of us bought out.
Do I know who it is? You don't have to say it, but do I know who it is?
You might do.
Okay.
My original, so my first employee in London, who was still working with the company and sort of head of the sales team by that stage, and a person I was working with in Sydney. He came over to the UK and we bought out David. That was about 4 or 5 years.
How did that feel to be able to buy something?
Yeah,
you
it was
bought and
good.
take more of it?
Yeah, it was good. Yeah, he
Got a
sort
good
of
return out of it?
He doubled his money.
Awesome.
He wasn't that happy with it. He thought he should have got more. But it's funny when you go from the position of trying to working with someone and you're benefiting each other to buying them out, and they want as much as possible. You want to give them as little as possible. All of a sudden, you're opponents. But no, we're still friends.
That's awesome.
We went on plenty of those ski trips. We went on plenty of those. I haven't been on one in a few years, but he told me I'm invited to the one in January. This year again. So
isn't that funny that it goes full circle? You start out on a ski trip and you finish up on more skiing trips.
Yeah. I think I went on 4 or 5 of them with them, and then sort of we as I said, we bought him out, so we weren't business partners anymore, and that's sort of his, people in his business circle. So I stopped going. But
I still think it's funny that you ski, bro.
Yeah, I'm back again. Yeah.
Ski little slopes. How are we doing for time? Because I can keep rolling. But what does it say?
It's 10:12.
10:12. What time do we
start at like 11:20 or
sick.
something.
Yeah, no, let's keep rolling. Right. So he's a little minion over there watching us, keeping an eye, make sure we do a good podcast. So so that's awesome that it's gone 360 like that. So with the numbing cream, I've got another good question for you. a lot of businesses that I've seen, complacency can be like just as bad as any other killers in the business. And sometimes when you're on that run and you're hitting really good numbers, I'll give you a good case study. One of my ecom businesses was doing like, I don't know, a couple hundred a month. Yeah. But for me, that was the first time we'd ever did that.
Yeah.
So I was walking around, patting myself on the back. I was like, oh yeah, here we go. And I'm like thinking I was so smart. And I had lunch with a corporate advisor to a competitor. And I'm like, I went to go pay for the tab. And he's like, oh yeah, blah, 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 600 a month. I'm like, wait, what? Who did 600 a month? And he goes, oh, your competitor. I'm like, what do you mean? And he goes, yeah, they were doing $500,000. I'm like, what were they doing? He goes, SEO, AdWords, affiliate ads, influencers, Facebook ads, TikTok ads, Instagram ads. He rattled YouTube ads. There was like 15 things. And he's like, what are you doing? I'm like, Facebook ads? And he's like, yeah, man, you should have been doing all of that. He's like, the market's tapped out now. And I was like, you're fucking paying for lunch, mate. Like, but the point was that it was on me. Like I got complacent. Were you ever in a position, whether it be with your finance business or with your e-commerce business, where you were kind of patting yourself on the back a little bit too much, and you maybe missed some opportunities?
Yeah, I suppose so. I mean, I think everybody has those moments of weakness. Whether it be like, just partying a bit too much or whatever, where you just sort of need to start pulling yourself, you need to pull yourself up a little bit at certain points.
But you've always been pretty good with that, during the week. You seem to be always
to work hard. I mean, lately I give myself more days off these days than I did before.
But that's a privilege that you've earned, though.
Yeah, and I think it's also because I've put myself in a position where, like, if I wake up on a Monday, I'm not feeling the best, I don't have to do anything that day, but I've still got a team of 20 people doing stuff that same day. So,
for sure.
And I'm just always on my phone. I'm constantly working from my phone. I think a lot of people look at that and say, you're so lucky, or like,
say it to me all the time.
That sort of stuff. It's like, well, I wasn't fucking born this way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? No one handed this to me.
Yeah, that's very true.
I think that is. You said before, you mentioned X Factor before. I think a lot of more of it is sort of just making shit happen and making sure that you get yourself in that position. But I do think there's a difference in a lot of people's minds, which may go back to what we said before about that sort of fear of failure and fear of being poor.
Yep. Where
some people just don't have that instinct of, what if things go wrong, or you said about being complacent, just using one platform. I'm always looking for new routes to market and all that sort of thing, just in case one does go.
So you're constantly thinking about this.
Yeah, I mean, I think even now, like even just the wholesale, like that's something we hadn't put a lot of effort into, and now we are putting effort into it, and it's started to make money. And there's other thing. I think we've got what I missed before. We've got a TikTok agency now as well.
Yeah.
So we do a bit of TikTok.
Is that converting well, the TikTok stuff?
It's up and down.
Yeah, it's hit and miss.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think if you want to make sure that you stay doing well, you need to be constantly looking for new things because things change. And
100%.
If you're making loads of money from Facebook ads, what if Facebook cuts you off?
Yeah,
that can happen overnight. Or what if you're only using one payment processor like PayPal, who can be a massive pain in the ass.
Have you ever been doing good money and your processor breaks?
It's happened numerous. It happened last week.
Really?
So yeah, like you need to learn the intricacies of these platforms that you're making money from and work out, well, if one goes wrong, what do I do?
Yeah.
Because that's happened to us loads of times.
I've had this.
And if you just lay down and don't do anything about it, then everything goes to shit.
That's a good segue, because I want to ask you about, like, one thing you've been good at on top of just being consistent with your work is you take advice really well and you listen to people, I've noticed. Do you find yourself mentoring business owners, entrepreneurs? Oh, of course you do, because you've got the book, and you like, what in your mind separates like a high performer who absorbs what you say versus someone where you just look at them and you're like, this isn't going to work, because no matter what I give you, if you can't recalibrate your attitude and your mindset, then it's not going to work. You should just go get a job. Like what
Yeah.
differentiates someone who's worth your energy and your experience
Yeah.
and your advice versus someone who just won't get it?
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to what people identify as being important. You know what I mean? Like, if like a lot of people you come across, their main focus is, you know, going out on the weekends or, you know, their friends or their family. There's nothing wrong with your family being your number one focus, but if you're not interested in learning from someone who's done it before, and you know, they talk about the sort of the power of association and that idea of the people you surround yourself, you become.
100%.
I think it's true to a certain extent, but I don't think you necessarily need to change your circle of friends if you don't want to. I think the thing I've learned the most from in that similar sort of fashion is books and podcasts and digesting as much information as possible from others that have done it before, you know, autobiographies and, you know, what's the term? Self-help books, stuff kind of along that vein, but not.
So you'll ingest this, like,
You know,
wherever
I've
you
read
can get it,
hundreds
sort of
and
thing.
hundreds of books and loads of podcasts, and you know, there's a podcast called the High Performance Podcast, which is
Really?
great. It's about, you know, they interview a lot of sports people and business people and that sort of thing. So I digest a lot of that information, and I think, you know, I would digest a lot more of that than spending time with my friends, for example. And I think along a similar sort of thought process of the idea of becoming the average of all your friends. Well, if you're digesting information from really, you know, amazing people, then you somewhat become the average of them.
That's fascinating, bro. I've never heard anyone, like, it makes sense. It especially makes sense for you because you got a very diverse group of friends. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
I think one thing that's always fascinated me with you is, like, you know, you would just be just as comfortable if I dropped you in a housing commission ghetto or a C-suite penthouse with a, you know, Fortune 500 CEO. So is what you're saying that kind of, like, you know, you can retain whichever friends you want, but it comes down to where you retain your inspiration from.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just about what hat you've got on at the time, right?
Yeah.
And that applies to business as well. Like, I think a lot of people pigeonhole themselves. You know, like, I'm a solicitor, or I'm a financial advisor,
That's a good
or
point.
I'm a marketing guy. And when you do that, well, you can only do that.
Yeah.
You know, like, I've never really considered myself anything, I suppose, aside from more recently, a businessman, you know, like, and that achieves some level of diversification.
I like that word, businessman. Entrepreneur's been flogged, bro. Like, I
Yeah.
have to say that sometimes too, because I'm sure you see this all the time. Someone sets up a Shopify website and they change their LinkedIn bio to entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And I'm like, come on, man. Like, where are your battle scars?
Yeah.
When were you
You're
almost
still
homeless?
a concreter, mate.
Yeah. And then I start posting motivational videos. I'm like,
Yeah,
bro,
yeah.
oh, come on, man. Like,
Yeah, at
you
least
know,
having a crack, I suppose. But
yeah, well, no,
Yeah.
don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with having a crack, but I just feel like the tag, I feel it has to be earned a little bit. I think you have a couple of scars, a couple of failures. You don't even have to have wins.
yeah.
But I like the businessman term.
Yeah.
So
I think that is a useful thing to keep in mind. Is, you said before, like, you know, some of my mates are jailbirds and some of them are super successful business people and sort of everything in between. That applies to business as well.
For
You
sure.
know, I think if you can be comfortable in a room, be confident enough to be the person you need to be in that room,
for sure.
that goes a long way. Whereas if you're just the, you know, school jock that is a solicitor and that's all you can be,
You nailed that one, Paul.
you know what I mean? Like, that's very one-dimensional.
I agree.
And even when it comes to building business relationships, and, you know, you can't. We mentioned before, like, you know, helping the people around you and that sort of thing. Like, you know, there's a huge difference between Steve in the US and our distribution center in the UK, for example, or and then, you know, the tattoo shops that we work with and the tattoo wholesale. Very, very broad, diverse range of people. If you can't adapt to getting along with those people, then you're going to struggle.
Talk to me about toxic people. When have you had to cut toxic people out, or have you ever had to?
I mean, can we include my ex-wife?
We'll save that for the therapy sessions, Paul. Listen, I think, you do raise a good point, because I think separations can be brutal.
Yeah.
I think, how you got through, without going too deep into it, how you got through that chapter, I'm sure that would have been very hard.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I think it's pretty common, isn't it? Not just in general, but certainly with people in business that are busy and stressed.
It doesn't take away from like the difficulty of it, though.
No, of course not. I'm also referring to how it ends up happening. Like, you're stressed, you're working hard. It's hard to maintain relationships when you're working really hard in business.
For sure.
Some people do it really well, and I didn't to a certain extent.
Do you think those pressures put pressure on the relationship?
Yeah, it puts pressure on the relationship. The relationship breaks down. Then you're putting pressure on yourself.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's tough. But as I said before, so long as you've built the right foundations, sometimes you can take some time off or some downtime to focus on yourself, so long as you've got the right things still going on around you.
Was that a difficult period?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, of course. It's always stressful. Like, relationship breakdown, and then going through court, all that sort of stuff, at the risk of losing half of everything you've built,
of course,
or more.
How'd you feel about that?
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, especially when you've been so focused for a long time on making money and being financially secure and all that sort of stuff. Making investments, and being sort of happy with where you've got to, and then all of a sudden, relationship breaks down, and you might have to give away 65% of it. Yeah, it's pretty stressful.
How do you keep your emotions in check? Because one thing about you over the past 30 years, to be honest, and like, I don't know what happens behind closed doors. Anyone could be anyone, but I've never really seen you buckle from anything. I've never seen you get overly stressed. I've never seen anything like really knock you. Like, has anything ever just really knocked you for six, where you're like, how am I going to recover from this? How am I going to get back on track?
Yeah, I mean, like, it's probably my two biggest down points in life was what I mentioned, that sort of burnout period in the UK, and then getting divorced.
Right.
But I think I've had hard times in the past before that as well, and
Sure.
I think that, for want of a better word, numbs you to a certain extent.
Oh, that is the quote, and that goes on the hero banner of the website.
Yeah, I think the saying, "Hard times make hard people."
They do.
You go through difficult times, you learn from them, and then when more difficult things happen, it's less emotional. It doesn't affect you as much, or at least you tell yourself it doesn't.
It's funny that you talk about this, because I was talking to someone about this the other day, because I think in business you gotta have a thick skin.
Yeah.
But I went through some hard things where I had to detach emotionally to survive.
Yeah.
Did you go through similar? Because you've been in similar situations.
Yeah.
Where if you allow this dam to break and that liquid to come in, it's just going to flood everything, and so you've got to keep it at bay. Like, have you had to do that?
I think everyone that's a business leader has to be like that to a certain extent.
I think so. I think CEOs for sure.
Like, you can't be weak in front of your team.
100%.
You can't let them know about your stresses, because then it becomes their stresses. I mentioned before, this is a good example, I mentioned before about those milestones I had to retain half the business in the UK. A few days before one of those milestones, we had 50 pence in the bank and payroll due the next day. So we had about £20,000 going out the next day, 50p in the bank, and we were owed about 100 grand or something. So I was just on the phone, going mental, trying to get this money in. You're calling solicitors, trying to put as much pressure on these people that owed us money to pay us. Managed to get it in the morning of payroll, paid payroll, got the rest in, and hit that milestone. So very stressful.
You
week.
Can't show that to anyone below you.
You can't miss payroll, or you're fucked.
Yeah.
As soon as employees don't get paid or their pay is delayed, that's your business over.
For sure.
So there was that stress. And then obviously the stress of hitting the milestone. So very, very sort of stressful week. But if I'd have been breaking down in the office over this stress, then, again, you're gone.
You've nailed the point, bro, because I say to people all the time, like, and not to like dismiss people who are going through stuff in jobs, but I'm like, if something chaotic happens to you, you can still get up and go to work. Like, if I don't, what happens? People don't get paid.
Yeah.
You know, people's jobs are on the line.
Yeah.
Investors lose money. Businesses fall apart. Customers don't get looked after. Like, there's a different level of responsibility when you're looking after that many businesses, and when you have people who depend on you. There's a different level of responsibility to you've really got to pull something up within you. You can't show weakness. You can't buckle under the pressure, because if you do, everything falls apart.
Yeah. I was reading a thing the other day that said a lot of CEOs have like a psychopathic tendency.
Bro, no. I'm so glad you talked about this.
Sociopathic or
no.
narcissistic.
No, dude. Okay, this is good. So there's an actual term for it, because you're gonna laugh at this. You're specifically gonna laugh. I was seeing this girl, and like we had to break up because she was being, you know, not nice.
Right.
And pardon me. I was like, yeah. So I said to this girl, I was like, yeah, we're gonna have to break up. And she's like, you're a narcissist. I'm like, I'm not a narcissist. She's like, yeah, you are. So I went away and I googled what is a narcissist, and it's saying like thinks they're good, and I'm like, but what if you are good? It's like
narcissistically analyze the word narcissist.
I'm like, are you a narcissist if it's true? but then I looked more into it, and obviously, you know, neither of us are on the psychopathic end of the CEO spectrum. Well, fuck, who knows about you, but not me. But there's a term called adaptive narcissism, and it's where you adapt narcissistic traits to not succeed in your environment. I think succeeding is a byproduct. You adapt narcissistic traits to survive in your environment. Yeah. And to your point, you know, if you're sitting there with payroll due the next day and you've got a tissue box and a phone, you reach for the phone, right? You don't reach for the tissues and start crying about it. Yeah. And I think it takes confidence to reach for the phone, because to be able to do that, you've got to be like, I've got this. It's under control. I can handle it. I'm good. I've got the confidence. I know what I'm doing. I've got a good business. These people are going to get paid. I can close these people on the other end. But to do that, you've got to have a level of self-belief that's a little bit above normal people. So that adaptive narcissistic traits, it's probably a shit word for it, but that's what the term is called.
Yeah, right. No, that makes sense. And so I've been called a narcissist a few times as well.
I can imagine who called you that, Paul.
But yeah, I mean, and I think that applies to what we were talking about before with like when people say, "Oh, you're lucky," or like I hate that word luck, because I don't think luck. Well, luck does exist, but most people that are lucky put themselves in a position to be lucky. You know, like so the combination of hard work and smart work that makes you lucky. And I can apply, like, you know, loads of people say to me, well, you always fall on your feet. Like, you know, I do stupid things and they just tend to work out.
Can I say, to be fair, I've said that about you, bro.
Yeah.
But again, I think it's by design, not by accident for you.
Yeah, in saying that, you know, maybe I'll make a mistake, but then I'll work really hard to correct that mistake.
Yep.
And then it works out. Whereas if I made that mistake and didn't do anything about it, it wouldn't have worked out. And therefore I wouldn't have been as lucky.
Yeah. How does that, it's interesting, how does that dynamic play out? Because it's different when you've got a kid, right? Because then you've got to kind of drop a little bit of that.
Yeah.
And you've got to become a different person for your little girl. Like,
yeah, that's true.
Do you find she brings you back down to earth?
Yeah, I think so. Like, I think scientifically, men's testosterone drops when you have kids, because you become more nurturing. You know, you're not an animal anymore.
Yeah, I've been told this as well.
So then you have to supplement that.
A bit of TRT never went wrong for anyone. A friend of mine said it's really good.
Yeah. Guy in the gym told me that.
You gave me a little bit of supplementation.
Yeah, but no, yeah. I mean, like I say, certainly having kids makes you to start to think more. Twiddling my words.
That's
there.
right.
Twisting my words. Makes you to start thinking about more than just yourself and being a provider. I think that was a big part of, you know, that probably happened for me at the right time because that was a big driving factor for me to, you know, get to where I am today and I think beyond that in the future, I suppose.
Yeah, I think the universe gave you a girl, to be honest, man. I think you kind of probably needed a girl at that point, and you do have a very beautiful relationship with her, and you know, I think kids can bring out like a good side in you as a CEO, because you know, you don't want to just walk around being ruthless all the time and having to, you know, keep your emotions in check. Sometimes it's just nice to just be real.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. You know, I think there's lots of things that cross over from, like, for me anyway, from like sport to then into business, just being ruthless, being relentless, all that sort of stuff. you can't be like that in a relationship with
true.
a partner
Very
or with,
true.
with a kid. You need to be softer.
This is
And
good
that's something-
emotional intelligence here, Paul.
That's something I struggle with, to be honest. You
Yeah.
know, I'm often told that I'm not empathetic enough, and that sort of thing. But it's something I try with, and I think I'm getting better at.
It's very, very self-aware. It's funny you talk about that because one of the questions in the notepad that I haven't even used this whole interview was like, I don't know if people know, you had a decent boxing record before you went into the workforce. What were you
Yeah.
at, like 10-0 or something?
Yeah, something like that. I lost one.
Right.
I won the state heavyweight title. And
What age was this?
this was, I think I was 22.
And
or
your
3.
dad got you into this, right?
22 or 3, yeah. So dad was a good boxer. He had about 120 odd fights.
Dead set.
Yeah, so
I didn't know he had
was
that
Irish
many.
champion.
Do you remember we were at your house in kindergarten and you were showing me all your dad's trophies?
Yeah.
That memory's just come back. And then
Yeah,
you had like Bruce Lee photos and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
right.
so I was always into the boxing from when I was a kid. I had a few fights when I was younger, about 13. When I was 13, I had a few fights, and then got back into it in my early 20s. And yeah, it was good to a certain extent. So far as boxing is a brutal sport, in that you're all alone,
Oh, man,
and you
I
need
know.
to be super fit. And then you get in there, you got, I played a lot of rugby as well. At least with rugby, you got 14 people supporting you. So if you have a bad day, it doesn't really matter. Whereas you have a bad day in boxing, you get hurt. So yeah, no, it was good. I mean, it was good. I think I did a bit of rowing as well, similar in a way, a lot of dedication to fitness and.
Did you ever get nervous going into the ring?
Yeah, I mean, I did. I kind of did, but I had a bit of a tough childhood as well. So
Yeah.
I thought the thing I always used to tell myself is, there's a referee. We're wearing gloves and headgear.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I wasn't shy of getting in a street fight either.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
So I was always, whenever I'd get nervous, I'd think, why am I nervous? I'm not
Yeah.
scared of this guy.
Right.
So I'd kind of talk myself down. Yeah. So no, I wasn't.
So you
I
would
wasn't
talk
that-
yourself out of that kind of state of like,
Yeah, actually, that raised a point probably worth talking about.
Yeah, please.
Is
I'm here for it.
I read a thing a few days ago that said that only less than half of people have internal dialogue.
What do you mean?
Talk to themselves.
Less than half?
Apparently, less than half
I
of
can't
people.
I can't not talk to myself, bro.
I can't shut myself up. But apparently, some people just walk around in life taking in what's around them,
Seriously.
as opposed to talking to themselves.
Wait,
I don't know if this is true or not.
Do you
but
know what an
it's
NPC
mind-blowing
is?
for me.
NPCs?
Oh, right, yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, yeah, and I think that's huge in business as well, is self-talk. I see the benefit in, what's the term? Thinking things into reality.
Manifestation.
I see the benefits
I've seen
in
you
that.
do that all the time.
I think some people go way too far with it.
Oh, yeah, for
And
sure.
and you can't think things into existence without actually doing shit to make it happen.
Completely agree.
I
Completely
think far
agree.
too many people read The Secret.
Oh, bro, don't even get me started on that.
and think that they can think themselves into what they want, whether that be
Yeah.
successful or meeting the right person or whatever. You can't. You have to actually get out there and fucking do it.
Yeah.
But the combination of the two is definitely beneficial.
Do you feel that like it's funny you mentioned on the topic of The Secret, like do you feel that in this world, like whether it's a universe or some force of nature or whatever it may be, that you do generally attract what you want in this world?
Yeah. In way, for me, in more of a practical way. Like, I'm not very spiritual. I don't think that if I've seen a lot of very bad people be very successful.
Really?
And that's kind of put the thing. I do believe in, obviously I believe in being a good person.
Well, bad people can manifest too, though,
Yeah,
right?
bad people can manifest. People talk about karma and that sort of thing as well, though. Maybe those bad people that are very successful will get their karma at one point or another, if it's a real thing or not. I think for me, it's more about good things have definitely come to me, but I feel like I've gone out and got them.
Good point.
Do you know what I mean? Like I've put in the work and I've decided, not always, or sometimes it's just happened by luck or whatever, but often I've decided, well, this is what I'm going to do and I'm going to make this work, and then it works because I've actually I've at least partly played a part in making that happen.
That's a very, very, very valid point. Yeah, so you reckon the people who want it just go get it. That's how it happens.
Yeah,
sort of
I
thing.
don't necessarily believe in if you're a good person and you're really positive and you manifest that things will come to you. There's a lot more to it than that, I think.
I think I have a very nuanced view on this as well, because I do think the world can be a very ugly place.
Yeah.
And I think there's an obligation on us. Like, if we want to be the architects of our own world, we've got an obligation to protect ourselves, our kids, our businesses, and our loved ones from that ugliness, because the world can be a brutal place. It would be naive to think otherwise.
Yep.
So, yeah, but I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think you can be a good person. I think you can manifest and be positive.
Yep.
And not get ripped apart by the world. But I think it would be naive to think that just because you have these attributes that the world's going to give you what you want. Because, bro, you know as well as I do, you can walk out and get hit by a car, you can get hit with a bat. The world's not always going to be a beautiful place.
Yeah.
But I try to believe that, like, we're the architects of our own world.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think a lot of people are quite entitled. And feel like they're due or owed something. I don't think I've ever felt like that in my life. I don't think I've never
seen that from
I don't think I've ever felt bad for myself in the way that, this isn't fair, or why aren't these people doing this for me. I think a lot of people, and maybe it's sort of taught to them as kids, like even like some of my family are like this, they'll look at someone who's successful or has lots of money and say, that's wrong. Why don't they share that? And I'm like, fuck off. They've worked really hard generally to get there, So yeah, I mean, and maybe we're talking before about sort of X factor or mindset or whatever. Maybe that's part of it as well, is that sort of, I mentioned about reading books, and one of the interesting studies I took for, I think it was a book called Success by Alistair Campbell. Really good book, by the way, if anyone's interested in that sort of thing.
Interested
I sometimes read, but mostly listen to audiobooks.
Is that so you can multitask?
Yeah, pretty much. I listen to them while I'm driving and traveling and all the rest.
It's very on brand for you, Paul.
Yeah. So sorry, I was going to. So there was a study that said that. I'm trying to think of the exact words now, but roughly,
take your time.
It was around the fact of about half of people feel like they are sort of set in stone. Like, this is what I am, and I can't be more. This is, like, for example, I grew up in Wyoming. Right. I'm going to be a school teacher, and I'm going to have 2 kids and a wife and a Labrador.
Yep.
Some people have that in their head, that this is where I'm at, this is where I was born, this is what I am, this is what I'm going to be. And other people are like, well, fuck that, I can be whatever I want to be.
Yeah.
And it's apparently about half of people
really
have a mindset of one or the other.
You're bringing the good stats today, man.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what I mean. That's what you get these stats from, digesting information.
So half people have an internal dialogue.
There or thereabouts.
And half people have a mindset.
Well, the dialogue one I'm still verifying.
That's all right.
I thought it was mind-blowing for me.
Jamie, pull that up and check that stat for us.
But definitely the mindset one. About half of people feel like they're sort of set and or just don't really mind about changing their situation, and the other half are of the mind that they can sort of achieve anything.
Do you think the first half are happy with that?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think. Certainly, something that I've noticed, especially when I first moved back to the Central Coast, was there's a bit. I found there was a bit of resentment.
I knew you were going to say this.
Mediocrity.
I knew you were going to say this, and. I think
not so much from my friends, but from like my partner at the time's friends and that sort of thing. If we're traveling all the time and we've got the nice cars and the nice house and all the rest, I definitely got some whispers of, who do these people think they are, type of thing.
When I see that, just for what it's worth, because someone said something to me recently, because I'm not too dissimilar to you in the fact that, like, if I go out for a nice meal, I might like to share it. Or if I've just picked up a nice car, I might want to post a photo of it.
Yep.
And someone said to me, "Oh, you're showing off." I'm like, I'm not showing off. I'm having lunch. I'm like, I'm not showing off. This is my car. Should I take a photo of a shittier car or a worse meal so that I can like lower myself to like meet your expectations?
I've had a few people I think help me about my social media.
But the problem is, like, the thing is, like, my view is in the same way. I'd never judge someone posting a photo of a fucking ham sandwich. I wouldn't judge you posting a photo of a lobster. I just think that I don't think you should discriminate up, down, or sideways. I think you should just accept people for who they are. And if someone likes nice stuff, let them like nice stuff.
It's interesting because, like, sometimes you hear the truth and sometimes you hear a bit of a warped version of it. But like, for example, Frankie, my daughter, had her sports carnival. Her first sports carnival. She's in kindergarten. They didn't do anything, but she did the running race holding. She did the running race holding a teacher's hand. It's quite funny when you see the year 6 one.
She hasn't even started a business yet. Like, what a loser!
And stuff. But no, it was cute.
Right.
But anyway, I ran into a school friend who I won't say who it is.
Go for it.
But I was having a chat with him, and I don't think he meant anything by it, but. Right. He was like, "Oh, what are you up to?" Blah blah. And I said, "Oh, we're in Bali." He goes, "Yeah, I know." and he goes, "I said, oh yeah, we will. We're back now. We still go over every few weeks, but we're not living there anymore. It's just a bit, a bit of a party town, a bit hard to have a normal life there."
Yeah.
And he goes, "Oh yeah, mate." He goes, "I'm happy you're not living there anymore. I have to watch your bloody social media posts."
You could just say you don't have to watch anything, man.
Yeah, but I think that's just an example of like maybe a bit of jealousy and a bit of like.
I think it's misunderstanding, to be honest, bro. Because I've had the worst thing I've had people say to me, which, and again, I think this is unintentional, I really do, where they'll be stressed and I'll give advice. I'll say, listen, you could do X, Y, Z, you can focus on this, you can do a little bit of this, and I'll give them a bunch of practical solutions.
Yep.
And instead of listening to my solutions, I go, oh, you're just not stressed because you got money. I'm like, the fuck?
Yeah.
I'm like, listen, first of all, where were you when I was like on a couch and couldn't afford a bus and had $2 in the bank and was almost homeless and was stressed out of my mind and had to suck up my pride and my ego with my back against the wall? And where the fuck were you when that was happening?
Yeah.
And I'm like, don't talk to me about you're this because you've got money. I could lose it like that.
Yeah.
And I wake up every morning ready to lose everything because at the end of the day, you should be comfortable with nothing as you are with everything. So I would say to people like that, just because someone has something doesn't mean that they're like, they can be, and I don't want to use the word discriminated, but like, I don't think you should judge people on either end of the spectrum.
Yep.
I think you should just let people be how they are.
Yeah.
And it's weird to experience it. Like when you've pulled off a couple of things that have gone really well, sometimes people will be dickheads to you.
Yeah, I mean, another similar type thing that annoys me sometimes is when you're talking about stuff, and I've had this quite a lot, especially at home, because we grew up on the coast. I'm living back there now, and I've only been there not very long, but people say, oh yeah, but you're smart. Are you fucking serious? I'm actually not that smart.
I was going to say, who are they talking about? I think we both were, really.
Yeah, I don't, I may be street smart, but no, like that annoys me, because that's just another example of people making excuses as to why they aren't where they want to be. Because they think the people that are where they want to be are smarter than them, and that's just not true. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's definitely not. I mean, I've got a lot of very smart people that work for me that are a lot smarter than me. Books, especially, and I've often said this. One of my business partners in the UK, he's super smart. He did a double degree in, I don't know, numbers and shit.
Wait, that's he's graduating. He pulls it. He's like, "Here's your degree in numbers and shit, sir."
Just like one of those really smart ones. One of those really smart degrees. I can't remember what it's called. But but that's just a certain type of mindset and a certain type of smart. Do you know what I mean? Versus, I suppose my mindset more about sort of creating stuff and that's another interesting point I've just thought of. I was having a chat a few months ago with an architect in the UK, and I said to him, and he was talking about all this designing stuff. I said, I'm not very creative. And he goes, wait a second, what do you mean you're not very creative? Because I've always thought to myself about being not a creative person. Like, I can't draw and I can't visualize things so far as like design. Like, this is a pretty cool studio. I wouldn't have a first clue about how to design the studio.
I feel you on that one.
But he was like, yeah, but you've got like 10 businesses.
Yeah.
And I said, that's a good point. You know what I mean? And I suppose it's just a different type of creative is, thinking of a business model. That's something I can visualize.
For sure.
And what are the moving parts to make that business work? That's something I've done numerous times, and I know which boxes to tick and that sort of thing. So, maybe another example of people sort of pigeonholing themselves. A lot of people think, well, this is what I am. But I don't think if you have the right mindset, you're not necessarily set as anything. I don't know if I've read a bit about like brain plasticity and that sort of stuff as well. Like,
really,
you can actually get smarter. You can increase your what's it called? When the number they give you for how smart you are.
IQ?
You can increase your IQ. It's not set.
Right.
So yeah, and also the idea of fish can't climb a tree, but it's a good swimmer.
Yeah. So do you think, I'm picking up on a theme here, do you find that like you know your limitations, you play to your strengths and acknowledge your flaws?
Yeah, I think so.
So do you just plug those holes? Like, I'm not good at this.
Yeah.
I'll fill it with that. I'm not good at architecture. Here's my architect. I'm not good at law. Here's my law. Like, do you just find yourself filling those gaps?
Yeah, I think, and again, from like these books and things that I've gone through, like you pick up a common theme of what people have done and what makes sense. And I think with any business, there's kind of three really important things. There's like the expert in that, what you're doing.
Yep.
Being one.
Yep.
And that's usually like, not necessarily the expert, but like the entrepreneur type person. That's usually the founder. Then you need someone that's good at the finance and the accounting side, and someone that's good at sales and marketing.
Yep.
Put those three things together. That's a business.
Yeah, agreed. Scale's another part, but yeah, that is the business. For
and
sure.
then you can scale it together. But what was I getting at there?
So we were talking about limitations, flaws, strengths, weaknesses.
Yeah, sorry.
And
So I think probably something that I've learned a lot about is finding my own flaws, or probably a better term is things that I'm not very good at or don't want to do, and plugging those gaps with people that do them well.
So funny, but I've done the exact same.
Yeah.
And to your point,
because you can't do everything.
Well, to your point of that person who said to you, yeah, but you're smart. Like, I mean, before I did this entrepreneur stuff, like I worked for Goldman Sachs, right? It's hard to get into bank.
Yeah.
But the people I was with, you're either a genius on the Harvard end of the spectrum, or you come from a very well connected family.
Yeah.
I went to school with you or me, and I fucking had no family for half my fucking life, you know? So it was weird for me being there, because like I felt like I fit in from the perspective of like, just like you or me, like if I wanted something, I was going to get it, and I wanted that and I got it. But then when I got there, I was kind of like, I didn't know where I fit in, because there's all these geniuses and I'm not that smart. There's all these like well-off, affluent people, and I didn't feel that I was that. So yeah, it was weird to kind of find my place there. Yeah. And I only feel like, I don't know how you feel about this as well, because you've gone from corporate to doing your own thing. Yeah. I felt more like myself when I was doing my own stuff than anything else, Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, definitely. I mean, I've never really felt comfortable working with someone else. Yeah. I've only ever had 2 or 3 jobs. Yeah. But just something that you made me think of there that was sort of a bit of a light bulb moment for me was, I went to school. I went to Joey's in Sydney, so it's a GPS school, mostly for rugby. I loved rugby, so that was why I wanted to go there.
You went there for rugby.
And from there, I went to Sydney Uni and played rugby at Sydney Uni. And there was an investment bank that was kind of the unofficial sponsor at Joey's. Right. They did all the rugby kit and all the rest. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, okay.
And then they were kind of the same at Sydney Uni.
Right.
And a lot of the guys that I was at school with and then at uni with got jobs with that company.
Oh, you mean the same culture of like you're either this or you're that?
No, not necessarily. But what I'm getting at is they got offered jobs with this investment bank, and that was like I wanted that so bad. Do you know what I mean? Like that's at that point, that's what I wanted.
I think I know the bank, but yeah,
that was like that was my
I know the exact
bar
bank,
of success at that point in time when I was 18.
Yep.
And then about 3 or 4 years ago, I ran into one of those guys that got that job.
Right.
And he said, "Mate, you're the most successful person I know."
Really?
And it was like, fuck, wait a second.
That's incredible.
Yeah. Well, actually, he said, you're second. So we played rugby with Nick Molnar, who started Afterpay. Oh, so he's worth about 4 billion or something.
Well, I think that's been cut in half since the tech drop.
Well, he's worth $1 billion.
Yeah, he's done very well.
So he said, you're second. But that was a bit of a light bulb moment for me, because it was like, okay, hold on a second. He got this job that I really wanted when I was a teenager, and he's probably done really well. He's moved over with that same company to London. He's probably on a few $100,000 a year. He's certainly not struggling. But for him to I hadn't seen him for years, and we caught up for a beer, and he's like, yeah, you're just doing so well, like, and I was thinking about that after, like, why, like, sort of dissecting that conversation. Yep. And I think a lot of it was that I didn't get locked in to that investment bank. Like you probably kind of touched on it. That made me think of it. You managed to cut loose of Goldman Sachs, which is the bar for so many people to work for Goldman Sachs. But after you've left there, you've done a lot better on your own.
100%.
And I suppose likewise for me, whereas if I did get that job with the investment bank initially, I probably wouldn't be anywhere near where I am today.
Yeah.
Because you get comfortable and they dangle the carrot and you know, all the rest.
Stick around for 10
unless
years.
you become a partner at one of those investment banks, you never really earn real money.
I think, bro, and you're 100% right, and I've seen it all the time. And one of my mentors is a good mate, an investor. He was a partner, one of the most chill dudes I've ever met. So thankful to have been in business with him. But everyone below there, they weren't happy.
Yeah.
And also, so to your point of that guy who pulled you, you're the most successful person I knew. I had a similar experience. I worked with a lot of fuckheads there, but there was a couple that were all right. And one of them said something similar, but I was like, what is it? And they're like, well, could you technically do whatever you want whenever you want? I'm like, yeah, I probably wouldn't even need to do much work, really. Like, they're like, that's what is. They're like, I can't do that. I mean, it's 16 hours a day.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, I'm on good money, but what if I want to take a week off? Or what if, they said that's what you've created that they see as something to aspire to, or something that's desirable, you know? And I think you've created something else in a similar way for yourself.
Yeah, definitely have. And it's nice to have that flexibility. But I also think that people that go into business or investing or whatever with the goal of having that flexibility generally don't achieve it.
I've seen that all the time.
Like hearing
too.
your attitude toward it and knowing my attitude toward it, it's great to be able to work from anywhere and take a week off if I want to. But that's not the reason I do it, if that makes sense.
I totally get it. Yeah.
So
it's a byproduct.
Yeah, like if your main goal is being able to stop working, that's not a very good positive driving factor.
Paul, that I think that's why there's such a big market for this financial freedom, because that's what everyone wants, but they don't realize to get that it's kind of it's a paradox.
Yeah.
Because to get financial freedom, you've got to not want to be free.
You have to be a psycho and work your ass off.
They don't realize
for
freedom
10 years, and then you might get a little bit of freedom.
Freedom comes from like not wanting to be free.
Cram 40 years of work into 10. And then you might be able to relax for the next 30.
Right, and that's why the courses industry and the self-help industry is so lucrative. Yeah. But it's lucrative for people that like 98% of them will not do what you tell them to do because they don't understand that freedom comes from what you just said, like wanting to do stuff all the time. This has been a good podcast, man. What are we sitting at now? God, we're doing well. First of all, this has been good. I think we should do it again because I've got you've come in, you've brought the facts and the stats, and you've really blown me away. I just want to wrap it up because what you've done, there are people who look at it and I think might misinterpret like what it takes to succeed. I think generally speaking, entrepreneurs, especially young entrepreneurs, are very receptive to advice. Like if you could go back to London and give startup entrepreneur Paul or like other people getting into this same sort of space your best advice to be able to succeed, what would you tell them? What are the main attributes they're going to need to cut it in this world that we live?
Yeah, good point. I mean, I think just to sort of summarize some of what we've already said, like you need to work your ass off when you're young. You need to take your risks when you're young. Learn from all the right people, or like I've done, digest all the right information from books, podcasts, all the rest. Learn from that, because that honestly, I think reading and listening to books and podcasts, I've learned more from that than I have anything else in my life. You can get a lot. I've had various mentors throughout life, but I've never really called one a mentor, if that makes sense. Yep. I've learned from a lot of people, but I've learned more from books and podcasts.
Right.
So I think digesting as much information whilst also starting something for yourself and working really hard on it, whether that be like a side hustle or doing what I did and, quitting your job and going and raising money and starting a business and just killing yourself to achieve that. As I say, although that can become a bit of a negative period for a short period of time, if I didn't drive myself into the ground 4 or 5 years ago to get that initial business going, then I wouldn't have achieved anything else after that. So summarize, work really hard, create an opportunity for yourself, digest as much information and learn from as many people as possible, and then apply that to,
I think what you've just said, taking those attributes, it doesn't work without action. It's almost like you've described how to build a Ferrari, but without any petrol, It's just a piece of metal, right?
Yeah.
I think that action is the most important part. I think what's been best about your career is it's just been consistent action, because every time you digest something, you act on it. It's almost like it's a repeat cycle: digest, act, digest, act. You know?
Yeah, you can look at things like autobiographies and good books about success and all that sort of thing as like a manual. That's pretty much what they are. And that's happened to me loads of times. I hear something like, oh fuck, and write it down and think, how can I do that?
Yeah.
A smart little businessman that's sitting in the back of the room called me this morning. He goes, mate, I've just been reading about India being the third biggest GDP in the world. How do we do something in India?
Yes. Just for everyone, that's going to be our next guest, by the way.
That's a good example.
The
He read something in the paper this morning. He goes, why aren't we doing stuff in India?
But that's what you need.
He was upset that we're not yet doing anything in India.
But have you noticed, you're around people like this all the time. I'm around people like this all the time. Like, it feels like we are around people that inspire us and that act in the same way.
Yeah.
And I think that's a perfect example. The young individual seated behind us is a prime example of someone who has what it takes to succeed and who takes that information and who acts on it.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And I think that's important. Paul, thank you for this. I'd rate this a 10 out of 10. Thank you for your time. And we're going to have to do this again soon.
Yeah, great. It's been fun.
Thank you, brother.
Thanks.
Cheers. That's a wrap.